Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of AI Unleashed. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Dan Course, who is the AI lead for Multiverse.
Thanks, Ash. It's a real joy to be here. I've been looking forward to this and appreciate you reorganizing it for me. It's very kind of you.
No, it's been a while that we've been speaking. For folks who are listening, Anne and I have been speaking for probably the last few months about various aspects of AI, workflows, automations, things like that. And it's usually my pleasure to be talking to somebody who I can have a conversation with around some of these things that are maybe a little bit more technical than just the organizations going to ChatGPT or Copilot and typing in a prompt, because the value that you get from AI is not always a one-to-one interaction with a web application. Sometimes it requires some more thought, some more structure, some more process, some more workflow, agents and assistants configured with data. All of these things are very exciting, and we're going to get into some of that stuff today. Dan, let's start the ball rolling on a fairly general topic. And the general topic is we've been in the AI revolution, the disruption, for ballpark 3 years now, 3 and a bit. And we've recently had an MIT paper that says that, adoption isn't great, value isn't great. You also wrote a paper on adoption and looking at how we might analyze adoption across various verticals with some case studies. So let's talk in a fairly general way about the disruption that is upon us, the revolution that is upon us. Do you think it's going in the right way?
Lovely question. Thanks. And again, thanks for having me. AI technical lead at Multiverse. So I've got some opinions on this, obviously, and broadly, is it going the right way? And it's funny. So I adopted straight away as soon as 3.5 ChatGPT came out. I was straight there and realizing the change that was happening. Did this MIT kind of quarter professional certificate, because I was like, wow, this is really changing fast. And I don't see, first to the point, I don't see adoption and usage and features slowing down at all. But I can totally hear what this MIT study is talking to about, hey, wait a second, are people seeing the right kind of value that's been kind of prophesized from all these kind of different tools and businesses? And I would say, yes, adoption is going the right way. I would also say, I think people think it's going to a valley of disillusionment about LLMs, but I still hold strong that I think the value is still there. And that comes more from, I went from an ed tech to Multiverse, and the ed tech, it was we're just using AI, we're just doing stuff. Everyone was trying things out. When I'm in my new role, working with students, you see people from places like the NHS just starting out on such a different kind of journey. So I would more say that the gap of difference between skills and AI literacy is larger than I expected when I start. So it is going the right way. I would say maybe the people saying, hey, it's going off piece slightly, are those that are further ahead compared to those that are just starting on their AI literacy journey. So I would say, yes, it is going the right way. And I'd say as well, there's so much more coming, so much excitement around what we can do soon as well. So yes, it is going the right way. And I think just hold your nerve. There's so much stuff that's available to general users now.
So let's tease that out a little bit. First of all, you wrote a paper on adoption, an article. And when looking at that, I guess the first question is, what do we mean by adoption?
Yeah, that's a hell of a good question. When we're talking about adoption, we can't be saying this is a mature kind of way of measuring adoption. If you're an accountancy, you're able to say, hey, we have this many people on this skill base, this certificate, all these kind of things. You can measure it in a different kind of manner. But when we talk about adoption and the AI, there's so many factors that come into it. It's bonkers. We're going across a massive broad church of new tools, a raft of tools and skills and abilities that we didn't have a few years ago. And at each of these kind of points along this kind of broad church, you've got different tools going on at different levels. So it's are you getting value from it? ROI, super important. But are people frequently using the tools? To what depth are they using the tools? But then there's a new tool comes out to use again that might build on something else. So it's you can't always put this great line in the sand. So when I'm trying to define adoption and I'm thinking about my learners, I think about where they sit on the differentiation scale of like, hey, are you brand new to this, and are you playing, or if we use a more like executive term, are you discovering, experimenting prompts? Are you doing something with it? But then when we think about like our learners at the higher end, we think, sure, you're probably using ChatGPT outside of work. Are you bringing those skills back, and are you able to bring those skills back to your kind of enterprise systems as well and start playing with agents? So yeah, new features, new tools, broad churches across like everything. Difficult to quantify, I'd say now, but exciting to quantify.
Okay, so my view is it's not difficult to quantify in the slightest. We just need to be
Oh,
clear
God.
on terminology, right?
Yeah.
So when I say what do we mean by adoption, we've got 40 years of technology acceptance modeling and the quantitative measurement of the formation of intention at the human technology interface. And that's been done to death in a way that is broad. It fits across every technology. It's been measured and measured and measured. And we've got meta-analyses and, meta regressions, and we've got systematic reviews that all tell us basically what the factors are that lead to the formation of intention. And that's acceptance. And that can be acceptance behaviors. It can be continuance behaviors. It can be rejection behaviors. And that's at an individual level. When we talk about the diffusion of innovation through an organization, we talk about Rogers, 1995 onwards, multiple editions. And we talk about the diffusion across early adopters all the way through to late stage adoption. And those are categories of adoption. When we talk about adoption in business sense, we don't know how to measure it. We're just going to call it adoption and ask a bunch of people and see what they think.
Yeah.
It's garbage, right? How can we
Got it.
possibly quantify and say there is no meaningful adoption if we don't know what adoption means and how to measure it? And we could be talking about, for example, ChatGPT, we're talking about how many unique users they have, how many repeat users they have, how many people come to the platform every single day. That's a quantitative metric. Put a number on it, and you can say categorically, this is how many people have signed up in this particular month. The MIT paper that we're talking about, which was saying, adoption is poor and ROI is poor. To some degree, I went, as usual, if I was on Instagram, I'd run straight to the comments. If I'm reading a research paper, I go straight to the methodology.
Yeah.
It's by no coincidence that I've named my company Methodology, because it's so damn important. The method. If you look at the method of this paper, they did a bunch of interviews with C-suite, and they did a bunch of interviews with department heads, functional leads. And their conclusion was that the workforce isn't using generative AI or is using generative AI. My immediate thought is, you never asked the workforce. How the hell do you know? What do you think?
That's to me. So I was listening. I'm in this story. This is great. Yeah, no. I've got quite soft with my kind of metrics of adoption. And you're totally right. If you think product management, you think, okay, how many monthly users do we have? How many monthly signups do we have? Product led, how many more are leading to other signups? And that's a great way of doing it. But I do know, like, just straight up metrics of having 90,000 like Copilot licenses and people have logged into it would not tell me that I have adoption. It would tell me there's an empty license sitting there. But I know there's more depth to what you're saying. Totally, I get that. But yeah, coming to look at the methodology was so important, because like when I said, yes, I'd love to do this podcast thing, based on that.
You weren't expecting me to go for the jugular immediately.
Oh, hell no. This is exactly why I love talking to you, Ash, because like every time I talk to you, it's like, but Dan, what about this? Hey, Dan, go for this stuff. And it's like, it's a perfect, I really enjoy it. It's a perfect sounding board for making sense of what I'm working through, because I don't have a doctorate next to my name. I have like just the working L&D for long enough, and also the ability to just play in like these tools. So chatting with you is always a great learning experience for myself. So talking to like methodology, like when I was preparing for this call, I was like, I love this article I've written, but I need to know more about what's behind it. Who is this from? And like, you're talking to, like, the BCG study was one of the studies in the article. And it's like, well, actually BCG are massive. They've only got enterprise companies. And the Thomson Reuters was a university. And I love universities. They have their own kind of bubble of doing things as well. I mean, every vertical does. So the methodology is so important about who's talking to it. Why did they publish this thing? Like, what are MIT trying to push? What are BCG trying to push? All these kind of factors. So I think I might have lost the train of thought for your question. Apologies. But
so
like,
the bubble,
yes, go.
That you're talking about, big consultancy firms, and even if we talk about L&D, you've mentioned L&D. We've both worked in this nebulous concept of L&D for a while. And one of the many talking points in the L&D industry, one of them is For example, we don't know how to quantify return on investment. The other one is we don't have a seat at the table. The other one is we need to be learner-centric. Learner-centricity, I think I've worked with maybe 2 or 3 clients max who actually go to the coalface and talk to learners. Most folks talk to stakeholders, talk to department heads, talk to leaders, talk to C-suite. Consultancy firms do the same thing. Why? Because they are budget holders, and consultancy firms want to talk to budget holders so they get more projects, which is great, but it's not meaningful in terms of data. And usually when I go to a conference and someone will say, a McKinsey paper said blah, 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 that 25% of CEOs have said they haven't seen adoption of generative AI, and another 75% say they intend to use it in the next year. It doesn't mean anything when we're talking about how the workforce is actually using tools, whether we use the term acceptance or adoption. So getting the meaning, I've just done a series of sessions with another company about how you go from raw data through to meaning, findings, something that you can rely on that doesn't have error in it. And with every study, it's important to acknowledge limitations. So if all we had, we could only access C-suite, we could only access functional leaders, then what we should be saying is, in the opinion of functional leaders, they think their workforce is not using or is using generative AI in a way that adds value to the company, which is very different from making an assertion that adoption is poor. So I think we need to temper our language in a research context such that our findings are meaningful. And that's why I scrutinize this idea of what do we actually mean by adoption. So you did a study on adoption. You were looking at BCG and Thomson Reuters and these kinds of companies. What kinds of things were they saying about adoption? Not only in terms of what it means, but also, is it high? Is it low? What are the barriers?
Yeah. So it's a great question. Like, so I am prepared, as always. Like, yeah, and I think as well, just quickly to briefly to what you said as well, like when you go to the coalface, that's where I've been sat as well recently, and you just see, I class adoption when I'm in these kind of classes. Are they playing? Are they using? Are they exploring? Because in a year's time, some of these tools are going to be so very different. I need to know that they can play and explore, and I feel like that could be a great critical factor in trying to work out whether adoption is going to happen or not. And the MIT study as well talks to, and I'll come to your question too, the MIT study we're talking to also mentioned about setting up like these kind of small, distinct champion kind of groups as one of the main factors. And when I was looking at this article I wrote, it showed me similar things. You can't just go and push asynchronous videos on people like, hey, here's our new tool, adopt because we've got your videos. Like, there was that total missing factor, and that was from Thomson Reuters and Copilot adoption. It was like they found like 70% of these people just went, I won't watch the videos. But they then found that peer networks between these kind of adopters, like little closed networks of people talking, playing, sharing, was a great factor in like adoption success, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, right. So
yeah.
you have the ability to, in your workforce, you implement the ability, licenses, whatever it is, for the workforce to play.
Yes.
Play versus value are going to be different things. And I've seen across many different organizations this concept of, we're going to implement something like Copilot and we're going to put a bunch of licenses in and we'll just see what people do. And then, you give them 6 months. Most people have had a play for a couple of weeks and then they've forgotten it was there and they've gone off and just done what they were doing before. And in the BCG article, there was something, I'm reading it off my screen from your article, in fact, which
Go
is
ahead. Yeah.
74% of companies are failing to achieve meaningful value from their AI investments. Now, for me, this is not surprising because if I was to make up a statistic about the interactions that I have with the industry, I would say 74% of companies have implemented Copilot, done nothing else, haven't looked at back office automation, haven't looked at their data, and they've just implemented Copilot and thought, let's see what people do. And it could be GPT, it could be Gemini, they're all basically, in terms of enterprise implementation, they're all in the same category. Let's implement something and see what people do. So it's not massively surprising to me that if you just say, here's a shiny thing, go and play with it, a few people will play with it and then they'll forget it exists. And that's not surprising. So when we have a statistic from a BCG paper that says 74% of companies are failing to achieve meaningful value, we have to scrutinize what were they actually doing and what did they expect in terms of meaningful value? Did they really think? And I know some of you listening to this are thinking this because some of you have asked me this. If I spend very little money and implement a shiny thing, without any change to my business, I expect to see my budgets be relieved to the tune of 70 or 80%. That sounds like an unrealistic expectation. So when we think about adoption and value and all of these things, there are some things that seem realistic and some things that seem unrealistic. But when you were researching your paper, how did you find that people were actually using AI and would, knowing you and knowing that you know about automation and workflow, were they actually doing this stuff that you and I would have thought would give value?
I think it's a great question. Some of them are just trying to adopt a coding tool, and that was the Thomson Reuters, where they started to get value. And I've got the list of kind of things they started to get out of it as well. No, it's no use, that one. Like, from what I can see, what I recall, it was around just trying to get access to prompts. It was around just trying to get access to just doing basic things. And I suppose I don't have really much I can bring to that kind of question, Sally, but I do have some things I can add to the doing the having a license and moving past play. I think that's something that I can certainly talk to if that's any value. Yeah, like,
go for it.
Thank you. So what I think is important, like, yeah, this play kind of factor is so important because it's done me really well. Personally, when I've been releasing products that have involved AI or just process improvement, it was just essentially me doing it's the lean product playbook. It's my favorite book. It's like, have an idea, plan what you're going to do, build it, and ask people. And so you're just trying to move through this little play loop of getting stuff to do and fail fast because it's agile, it's lean, it's my favorite parts. And I think you touched on something really important. Like, you can't just put licenses out. People will play, but then they will just adopt what they did before anyway, because there was no kind of formal support. Sure, they had videos, but what they needed was they needed this L&D support, this kind of peer network of playing and trying stuff out, and these kind of champions to help lead and draw stuff out. And what I like about the structured programs is the ones that ask you to do project-led learning and constantly play but apply, I think really starts to build that change of, I mean, how we're trying to define adoption is always different, but just really leads to better adoption because people get the chance to play, but then they're forced, like, you know, about adult learners, like, they don't want to do anything unless they really have to. And so, like, they're forced to try and get these kind of grades, this kind of framework they're sat in to go, hey, I have played, but now I've really got to apply it to something and prove with some return on investment. Hours saved is a great one, obviously, but qualitative stories of, oh, I didn't know I could do this, and sharing that out. I feel like that's how you move from play to adoption in a much more structured format, which is where we sit with L&D, is that kind of support, giving that kind of put some skin in the game by saying, actually, you want to get your grades out of this, so let's play, but hell, you better apply some of this. And it just starts to lead to people trying stuff, but getting their skin in the game to deliver something as well. So I can't talk to what kind of things they were actually doing in the end, but I certainly did want to pick up on that play point for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, play is a way of building skills, and I guess one of the problems with play is that most companies, most organizations, most people are time poor. So time poverty leads to a lack of the ability to play, even if you have all of the other factors around you. So we talked about adoption, but you've mentioned L&D a few times, and let's talk about how much L&D as a department versus learning that happens at work. So these are different things. And in an organization, in a team, you might have people who are learning from their peers, they're learning from the tools that they have, they're learning from experience, they're doing work, generally speaking, solving problems as they find them, which is slightly different to having a formal L&D department, which may put out a few programs about a particular tool or put out a general purpose literacy program. If you're watching this, the AI Chrysalis, I have a literacy program. Buy my literacy program.
Buy more Chrysalis. Yes.
Yes. So, you know, these are slightly different things. But if we think about the concept of learning in an organization fairly broadly, we have things that people need to learn. We have literacy, we have tool-based usage, and all of these things ultimately lead you to the concept of people getting better at what they do, building skills, all of this stuff. But there's also the tricky question of, well, what should the L&D department, the formal department, what should that be doing? And what do we need to divest towards operational units or folks that are doing work? So where's the split? Where's the line? What do you think L&D departments should be doing?
Great question. I was listening to your AI Unleashed previous call with that. Who's that chap? Sorry, had an L&D department of 4.
Avinash. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh my word. What a chap. Like, I was loving hearing how he approached like that chap who headhunt him immediately. Like this chap had this such a great thought about what they should be doing and how it has changed in the release of AI. And I loved how
Yeah.
he phrased it around like just via the tools. I mean, I'm a technical lead, so I listen for tools a bit more frequent than I should. But he was talking about, hey, wait a second, we have a team of 4, and actually that's right on for our size of what we're doing. We've set up this kind of institution, this university, and they're still there, so desperately required, but they're trying to divulge, or I can't think of the right word, but give out the ability for SMEs within certain units to build their own kind of learning around certain factors. And I thought that was a
Mm.
very kind of forward-thinking mindset about allowing people to build their own kind of skills base they see on demand as they go. And so, like, I've always maybe worked at, I worked at Warwick University for a bit, internal kind of vendor on L&D, but working like I've always worked at external vendors because I kind of prefer the pace. And so, like, there's, I think the MIT study talks to it as well. There's value in kind of both kind of actors in the situation as well. Like he talked about, like, we can just divulge some of these skills and these abilities to out to people who are the SMEs to train up our people, like lickety split, let's go. But, the ability as well to have certain specialist training come in as well from external. I mean, that's where I work as well. I think that has such great value because it you can't get away with doing like basic stuff when you're an external because you are called up a lot faster, I'd say, than anywhere I've been called up and like gone, hey, what's going on? Much faster than you were if you work internally. You can kind of hide slightly, I would say. So I see kind of like two different kind of departments, both not two different ways of acting as both being quite valuable, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. And if we take that to the nth degree, what we're saying is the L&D department is an enabler for operational learning to happen. And that means that the skill set probably needs to be different than it maybe has been in the past. The other part of this is, I think you messaged me and you were saying that, let's talk about controversial stuff. You messaged me and you were
I
saying
wouldn't dream of doing
that,
something like that, Ash. Come on, sorry.
how AI is going to impact various roles was part of the papers that we've been talking about, the consulting papers, the McKinsey papers, the MIT papers, all of these things that we've read. And the impact, Microsoft released one as well, what's the impact of AI on various roles? And notably, there's an omission, right? There's no talk of L&D at all. Why is that?
God, that's such a good question. Like, yeah, because we were messaging and it was a case of look at this MIT study. Hey, these different verticals are affected. Tech and media is adopting AI change fastest. It's like, well, okay, fine, that makes sense. But you're totally right. There's a massive blank spot around L&D and adoption. And your previous chap talked about people still think of L&D in a way as like the backroom kind of thing, a secondary thing, and they don't see it as the driving force of change. And I suppose that's like, if I come back to the article, it's a real brief story, I promise. Like when
Go for it.
I wanted to write this article about adoption, I just started at Multiverse and I was sat at Coventry train station on a rainy morning, waiting for my train to roll in, chatting away with ChatGPT, like just trying to synthesize some of my thoughts. And I was like, I'm about to go on a train with zero connection. I've just paid 40 quid to try out Manus. Like, oh my word, this thing can act autonomously. And so I just said, all right, I want to build this study to really understand, without polluting like the context, really understand what drives AI adoption. And I could not mention in it L&D. I did not want to get into that because I don't want to like pollute it and take it off in its own bias. And so I set this I worked ChatGPT to write the prompt and push that into Manus to help start off this study. And it worked autonomously. Came back with rubbish on the first time, but this is kind of part of learning. And without fail, came back with, by the way, some of it's failing from sponsorship. We know that. Like endless studies say, hey, you just need a big boss person at the top to go, we're doing this. We really are doing this, the executive sponsorship. But it just always came back with, by the way, L&D support is so key in when you're looking for AI adoption. I was so surprised because I was made sure I hadn't like polluted this kind of context. And so I don't understand why it is missing from these kind of larger studies. And we come back to like methodology, who wrote the paper and why. I don't understand totally who wrote the paper and why they might leave out learning in an L&D kind of context. It was very surprising. I don't know where you got to that as well. Like, why do you think they left it out of the study? Because it's contrary to what I wrote.
So for me, there are a number of reasons. And
yeah,
one is that communication, education, training, supervision, practice, all of these things should be part of any initiative if you want it to be successful, because people are going to need to know what's changed, how do I use it, what does it mean for me? This is mostly the concern of everybody. Do we need a formal department for that? Is there a formal department that is part of the value chain of a business? I think that's a very different question, because if I go and ask, I am now in the fortunate position where I am the CEO of a company or the leader of a company. I know a lot of other people who lead companies who are CEOs of companies. So if I go and ask all of my friends, do you have a learning department? 100% of them will say no. Why? Because it's not part of the value chain of a business. Value chain is inputs, throughputs, outputs, and those throughputs will involve people, they will involve skills, and then you have an enabling function that might support or might not, because most folks find it difficult to do this or measure it or prove efficacy, may or may not support the development of skills, the application of those things, the ability to do tasks and activities more effectively, the idea of competence, the idea of proficiency, may or may not be supported by a department. It may just be a department that says we're gonna reformat some PowerPoints and push out some compliance stuff, and there's a tick in the box, and therefore you can say that you complied with a thing. And because the concept of an L&D department is so variable, it can be any of the things that I've just mentioned or something completely different. It's difficult to call that a discrete profession, because this could happen operationally. This could happen with the technical teams. They could be developing their own capabilities. It could be that you have this in your legal function. It could be part of compliance. It could be part of HR, right? And when you look at some of these papers, they will be talking about the effects on legal. They'll be talking about the effects on they'll be talking about the effects on operations, manufacturing, engineering, all of the things where you say, actually, they may be doing their own development. Does it need to be a discrete department? So I think it is difficult to say that it's difficult to measure, quantify, qualify, justify when you're doing a study like this. It's difficult to say with a certainty, reliability, and validity that there is a thing that is called a department that is just for learning. And that's why I think it's mostly excluded.
That makes sense. So you're saying it's more of a fractured kind of offering. So it's more difficult for them to maybe bring it to the study as like a single kind of unit. Like it's in different, so I've certainly talked with enough people who are in the L&D department and their job is to alter the PowerPoint, deliver PowerPoint, kind of go home, the poor monkeys. But I get what you mean. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
There's another thing, and that is that, back to what I was saying about CEOs, most of them, if you think about what I said about methodology, not my company, the method of the research, if you think about that, I was saying that these folks from MIT went and they asked a bunch of CEOs, what do you think the adoption is? What do you think the use is? What do you think the impact is? And another point that I made, and Avinash made this point as well, and I've heard this at many conferences, is L&D doesn't have a seat at the table. So you ask CEOs, that's going to look around the table and go, right, this is what I'm going to think about. So it becomes cyclic.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That makes total sense. I love it. And like I've already mentioned lean. I'm a child of lean as well. And like when you think about just like value mapping and waste and all these kind of things, it often seems like L&D is like just an improvement rather than like I will do the L&D in part of this process to deliver said thing. So I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
Let's dive into lean for a second, because I know the principles, but I'm not an expert in lean or Six Sigma or any of these things. But I remember doing this thing when I was doing my MBA, and they were talking about staple yourself to an order. I think it might have been Toyota. And this idea where if in the old school kind of paper and in trays kind of workplace, you would say, right, I'm going to follow this bit of paper around as it goes from a request through the various bits that add value towards an invoice. I'm going to follow the bit of paper around, and it's going to get filled in by this person. Then it's going to go sit in this guy's in tray for like 2 weeks because he's on leave. And then it's going to go over here, and then it has to go back because something was missing.
Yeah, quality was
wrong. You follow that.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the way you articulate a process. And then you can look at delays and you can look at efficiencies through that lens. And now we have process engineering, which is basically the same thing. But if we apply that lens to a typical learning department, so we have the processes that add value in a business, and they say we're going to implement a new software system that's going to use this kind of data. Maybe it's a new product and it's going to launch it to these customers, and we're going to get money from those customers. In that particular process, there is no L&D, but somebody might say, well, we need people to know what the software is or which button to click to do X, Y, and Z. So someone goes to the training department and says, build me some training on this, because we didn't include it when we bought it. And then you have somebody who takes a bunch of screenshots and organizes it into an e-learning package, and then puts it out, and the stakeholder says, make this mandatory for everybody, because we know how much people love being told what to do. So let's make it mandatory. And then everyone shows up and clicks through it, and then it's done. If we think about that process and we staple ourselves to that order in the principles of lean, how would you treat that as something that could be improved?
That's a great question. Again, like staple yourself to that process of going through, of saying, hey, because I'm subject to many mandatory point and click kind of activities, even at like in the kind of AI first company, whether I like it or not, we still have to do these kind of mandatory things. If I staple myself to the beginning of that, like I think you're talking about different buckets of why we need to know these things and why we need to act. Some of it is just a tick box exercise, and those are more those kind of factors. And I wish I had a magic answer to just say, we should say, I stay with myself to the beginning of this, and actually I've been able to remove the waste part of this kind of odd things that go on in the middle. But I think for those kind of like some learning activities, think about bribery, think about the kind of basic ones you have to do, the bribery ones, the understanding about modern slavery.
Don't set the building on fire, right?
Yeah,
Don't show your
those kind of things.
Those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had a magic wand to just say, hey, you should just do it like this and everyone's happy. But you kind of have to be, adult learners, I would say, do have to be forced through those kind of things, because they are mandatory. They're not fun, but you still have to make sure to do them. And if I think about the ones I've done recently, that kind of level of, I just need to make sure I can recall some of these facts and tick box, say I've done it and do the test at the end, they've got a lot better. So maybe some of those things on that value chain have been around. We should make it slightly more exciting with audio visual. We need to make sure we have little kind of application questions in the middle, but we need to totally respect that this process that I've stapled to needs to go as much as possible, because there's a lot to get through. So when I think about that particular bucket of learning that we all have to do, whether we like it or not, it's got better. So I assume the lean process has been, let's add some magic with video and people talking to us, rather than just, I worked at Summerfields when I was like one of my first jobs. I remember sitting in this kind of cold room looking through this chemicals kind of Filofax thing, just going, and now you should not use this and you should be ready for this. So I would say a lot of that has been improved just by making it a bit more fancy, and that's fine. I think the magic wand is fancy, and that is fine.
Well,
sorry for the lack of insight on that one, but it's an interesting question.
I'm glad you said that, because I want to take this in a very different direction.
Go ahead.
Now, fancy is better. Basically, visually fancy is better. And I do agree that as people, generally speaking, the first bite is with the eyes. It doesn't matter where we are. You go to a restaurant, you look at the food. Plating is everything, right? When we demonstrate value in learning and development, in marketing, even in customer interactions and sales, usually you will say, what's the fancy thing I can show? Now, the fancy thing that I can show is not going to be the value. If we think about the MIT paper, we think about the AI revolution, we think about what I said in terms of agents, assistants, workflows, automations, and retrieval, the agents up front, the shiny picture, the video is a very small part of the entirety of the value chain when it comes to AI. And unfortunately, we are in this position where the first bite is with the eyes and we go, what a shiny video, wasn't that great? Versus how much of this could be done completely differently through something that is tightly controlled in terms of AI. And every time I hear somebody talk on LinkedIn, certainly this stuff is everywhere. When I hear somebody talk about the latest model this and the latest model that, look, you're not sending a ship to the moon, right? You don't need most of the capabilities of what these models do. If you're making a curriculum on X, Y, and Z, and you want to push it out as an e-learning course, then let's face it, GPT 3.5 probably would have been enough. Talking about, we can use Grok 4 super heavy for this. It's like, yeah, okay, sure you could. I mean, who cares, right? And, and then, so people will be talking about these things as if they're important, but also people will be talking about things like hallucinations. Hallucinations, the moment you talk about hallucinations, to me, what I'm hearing is you're somebody who likes to go to ChatGPT and ask it with probably a poor prompt to deliver you lots of value. And it ignores the whole concept of automations and assistants and knowledge bases and hyperparameters and things like temperature and being deterministic versus probabilistic. And these are all things that we have to construct if we're doing workflows. Now, I know you're a workflow guy. So what's your view on moving away from the shiny thing, which is what we were just talking about, towards value that basically isn't shiny, it's not sexy, but it's going to give back office automation to, for example, L&D?
Love that question. Yeah. And you're so right. So like write a lot on LinkedIn, and just to come to the shiny thing, every time you ask an LLM to write for LinkedIn, it's like, hey, here's the uncomfortable truth, all this kind of horrid stuff. And so I often ask my LLM of choice at that moment to say, don't be performative, please write naturally, because you're going to drive me wild and sick in my mouth if you carry on like that. So agents right now, and I still think agents will be the shiny, sexy thing to draw people in. And I was thinking on this recently about, and I will come to your like away from shiny to actual value. Like I think for a while, and this is my own personal opinion, AI first has been the shiny thing. We should be AI first. Maybe that's a factor of adoption. Like the vision is AI first. The strategy is we do X, Y, Z to be AI first. I do think we shouldn't be aiming at that anymore. I do think we should be aiming, not because it's shiny, but because there's value in it. I think we should be aiming at AI agent first. Like I feel like AI first is the moon and you land on a cloud, but I feel like AI agent first is aiming for the stars and landing somewhere on the way. Because of coming back to your question, like now I've been using like AI agents for a lot of months to help me work stuff out, general agents mostly, to try and make sense of the power they have and how you can, instead of just go, and here's the value, instead of go prompt, get something back, qualify it, get something back. I hate just typing manually. Like I'm very much of voice. And so I went straight, as soon as voice came out in ChatGPT, I was there talking to it. Someone in one of the classes I ran thought it was bonkers. They're like, you talk to your AI? I'm like, yes, I do. And I was like, oh no, wait, you don't? And I was like, oh no, I think I might have gone too far. But like I talk to my AI because it's important, it's faster. The studies to show you can get through more as well. But I think we should be going AI first, agent first as the shiny, and that's important because in that the value is being able to orchestrate over your tools. Like your agent can go, you want to do this, I can use these tools, I can search, I can write, I can send. I'm going quite simplistic here. The tools are like the little keys in a keyboard. I can do these things for you rather than just prompt, I write back, prompt, I write back. And the value there, I'll say tenfold, I have no idea, but the value there to speed up and handle things faster is insane. But coming back to what you're talking about, like that's the shiny, but to get there, you need your AI literacy to check for hallucinations. I did a recent article as well on like, I can't say the word, sycophancy, which is essentially where you can push your AI and which model, you could push your AI and which model. Some ChatGPT is one of the worst offenders, it turned out, to just agree with you and say, hey, these should show 15%. And it was like, sure, 15%, fine. Claude was like, chill out, I'm not doing that. And so you need that AI literacy at the beginning to get to the shiny, to know where you're going to go. Like one of the Claude developers, like on a podcast recently, was saying, hey, you know what, actually it's good enough to do most tasks for at least the next 3 years. We don't need to make LLMs big, which is why I wonder about adoption of like, hey, it's going down the trough, the valley or whatever it is of like disillusionment, is like, well, actually they're kind of good enough. And now we need to start going towards agents, which can orchestrate and run 50 things compared to your one in, one out kind of process. And smaller models as well that can handle smaller kind of tasks. And coming to the workflow point, which I think is important. I see in my mind, this is only my thinking, we go AI literacy, we go, I can prompt and get recipes. I can now use it to do my emails. I can now use it to sort out my meeting transcripts, my actions. I'm getting that literacy. And then from that, I see progression using it in tools like if you're in Copilot, MS, Word, all the lot, to saying, actually, I can schedule a prompt fine, but I need to start pulling some of these things together in my business process, like Power Automate and going, or Cassidy or NAN and going, doof, doof, doof. I've built a thing that's faster and repeatable. But what I love about this kind of chain that we're talking to is getting towards the shiny. These agents can then pull on your workflows to start doing what you've built, but at agent speed, becoming an agent boss. So like this is, for me, this is like where I'm trying to think ahead to, like agent first leads you from the AI literacy, the basics, the scheduling, the workflow building to the AI orchestration, where you can start to go, actually, I really am speeding up my work here. there's quite a long way around saying away from like shiny to value, but that's where I see the value chain of
Mm.
progression in an AI adoption that I think is most exciting.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean,
The
for
monologue,
those who
sorry.
follow this, no, for those who follow this channel, I've talked many times about having a business that's built almost entirely like a multi-agent framework with lots of workflows and lots of assistants and lots of agents. And it's, yeah, you can do a lot with that kind of thing. My point is more that L&D or marketing or, clients basically generally in nearly every category, if you're doing a presentation, you can't really show them a workflow. You can put it on screen, but really you should be showing them the shiny outputs of a workflow. And that's because people are shiny things. Now, I wrote an article about this on LinkedIn not that long ago. And for those who don't know me that well, I like to put a lot of like a thought or a message in the pictures that I use for the articles. And this one was a magpie looking at a fragment of a mirror on the ground. That's because we as people are distracted by the shiny thing rather than looking at value through automation and process. So yeah, I think all of this stuff is going to shape the future of the AI revolution. So last question. I
Oh,
always ask
last,
this
yeah.
of everybody. And that is, with everything that we talked about, we have adoption, we have workflows, we have agents, we have working with voice, working with chat, we have that individual relationship with AI versus having repeatable and robust processes that can produce outputs that are value creating. All of this is fine. We also have to think, of course, about the impact on jobs, on society, and all of this stuff. With everything that we've talked about, do you see the future as utopian or dystopian?
I love it. Am I going Judge Dredd or Star Trek? Yeah, I had to wrestle with this, and my answer is going to go from personal experience. I had to seriously wrestle with this. Once I used ChatGPT 3.5 and was like, can it write code? What can write code? And come back like ChatGPT 3.5 is actually pretty good. I realized I really needed to upgrade what I could do. And I see the future as utopian. I'm not going to, before I saw it as I'm really heavily concerned. That's why I went and did my MIT course. That's why on machine learning, all these kind of different factors. That's why I've been pushing myself to go this way. And I've shifted from this kind of grief cycle kind of way of looking at it to, oh my word, this is actually quite incredible. Jobs are going to change. But the thing that matters is this is why I say it, because these tools, these features, this literacy is available to like everyone. The median age here at Multiverse is 45. For an apprentice, it's not like old school 18. Like everyone has access to this to lift up their own kind of skills. So if we're all lifting up these skills, then we can all do the same kind of thing anyway. So for me, I'm going utopian because right now it's exciting and you can play. But at some point, people will have, we've talked about these value chains, be higher up and be able to use these things and build things for themselves. And more models are becoming open source. You can run them on your own computers. You're not beholden to those who are offering them on like a kind of cloud service. So I'd go utopian massively. And I suppose if I had to leave it with a slight message, I'd go with play. Like just enjoy playing and you can start to see what you can do with it. It's available to everyone. You can have the skills and build them yourself without trouble.
Very good. For me, it's
Yeah, what do you say?
it's utopian at the individual level. The land of opportunity is digital and is available to all of us. But I think it's dystopian on a societal level because I think the vast majority of people, normal distribution of capabilities, most people do not or will not have the capabilities that that a machine can do, which means they will be less valuable in the workplace than a scalable machine. So that I think that's going to be a problem that we're going to have to deal with, which is going to be slightly dystopian. So I think mixture of the two,
Judge
depending
Dredd
on
and Star Trek.
absolutely. So on that note, it's been a pleasure. Dan, thank you so much for being here for the last hour.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy talking with you finally at length.
Amazing. If you're watching this, if you're watching it on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're watching this on Insta, LinkedIn, one of the short form channels, check out the website, check out the channels where we're posting the long form episodes. And of course, you can find this on Spotify, and don't forget to follow the channel. So until next time.